Top of the morning to you, Year 10, and welcome to another delightful lesson with me, Miss Letts. And today we're exploring the Irish poem Storm on the Island. And that's literally all I'm going to do in the Irish accent because I'm probably offending hundreds of people, and this is the best I can do after 6 minutes of YouTube videos. You can see I've been spending my time wisely. So you're going to need your anthology for this one. If you haven't got it, I will put the poem up on the screen shortly so you can copy it down. It's on page 35. So plan of action for today is a learning review quiz on Teams. Then we'll talk about the context of the poem. We'll read it through. I'll give you a little summary. We'll spend some time annotating. And finally, we'll have our poetry consolidation where we put all of those ideas together into slightly more extended responses rather than just notes. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is go onto Teams and access their weekly Retrieval Quiz. Now, it's about last week's work, which was language questions 1, 2 and 3. So for this quiz, I've kind of just done a brief technique quiz just to recap those skills and that knowledge that you're going to need to have. So I would recommend pausing the video now and completing that quiz if you haven't already done it. Fabulous. So we need to understand the context before we even read the poem through properly, because it's going to help us, it's going to inform our understanding. So this is Seamus Heaney. He's obviously an Irish poet, and he was born in 1939 in Northern Ireland, which at the time, well, it still is actually, which is predominantly a Protestant country. Now, he was raised Catholic, and as a result of that, he faced a lot of discrimination growing up. So, although this poem kind of links to the Irish Troubles, it could also link to Heaney's personal past too. So you might have heard this term, the Irish Troubles. You might have heard of the IRA, car bombs, how it was quite a tumultuous place to live. But it actually dates back much further than that. So Britain first invaded Ireland in the 12th century, so the 1100s, and that's how far back it goes. And in 1922, Ireland became independent, that's this bit, and Northern Ireland became part of the UK. And that's the start of the most recent troubles, if you like. So a lot of people have this misconception that it's the animosity between Ireland and Northern Ireland is as a result of religious conflicts, but actually it's far more about territory. So the Unionist Party was mainly here, and they wanted to stay part of the United Kingdom, whereas the goal of the Nationalist and Republican Party, they wanted to have their own country, the Republic of Ireland. Now, it just happens that this section tends to be Catholic, this section tends to be Protestant. And I realise that I've spoken about this as if you know what it is. So if you're not quite sure, both are denominations of Christianity. They're just slightly different. If you're interested, Google it, because I'm no expert. So there's always been this conflict. There's always been troubles. I would like you to take notes on that, and looking at my copy of the anthology, I think you've probably got enough space in one of the bottom corners to jot some of those ideas down. Do that now. Right. The other thing that we need to explore a little bit more is the title of the poem. So on its surface, it's very literal. It's about a storm on an island. But if you look at these first letters, they spell out Stormont. And Stormont is actually the name of the Parliament buildings in Belfast, which is why on the one hand we can take this poem quite literally, but on the other we can see it as an extended metaphor for the troubles in Ireland. So I would like you to make notes on that around your title, please. Let's read the poem. We're well prepared. I'm going to start that again. We are prepared. We build our houses squat, sink walls in rock and roof them with good slate. This wizened earth has never troubled us with hay, so as you see there are no stacks or stooks that can be lost, nor are there trees which might prove company when it blows full blast. You know what I mean? Leaves and branches can raise a tragic chorus in a gale, so that you listen to the thing you fear, forgetting that it pummels your house too. But there are no trees, no natural shelter. You might think that the sea is company, exploding comfortably down on the cliffs, but no. When it begins, The flung spray hits the very windows, spits like a tame cat turned savage. We just sit tight while wind dives and strafes invisibly. Space is a salvo. We're bombarded with the empty air. Strange. It's a huge nothing that we fear. Okay, so that's a poem. And if you would like a little summary written down in your anthology, again, there's space, you could write something like this. So at the beginning, the narrator describes how community thinks it's well prepared for a storm. As the poem continues, the confidence disappears as the storm kind of gets increasingly worse, and we get to see the power of the storm, the power of nature. And at the end of the poem, we've got that idea of fear. So that's quite a literal understanding of the poem, but it is one interpretation nonetheless. So can you please jot that down, please, in your anthology? Right. We're going to look at the poem. I've broken it up into a few lines at a time, although really it's just one massive stanza. So, looking at this first part, the first 5 lines, we are prepared. We build our houses squat. You've got these personal plural pronouns here, like we, our, and it gives us this sense of solidarity, as though the whole community is in it together. Equally, the use of present tense here, we are prepared, kind of suggests that the threat is immediate. It makes us feel as though we're part of the action, we're part of this problem. You've also got the caesura after the first 3 words, so we are prepared, colon. It's almost emphasising that preparedness, what they have done, how confident they are. It just gives this somewhat misplaced sense of confidence. The wizened earth had never troubled us. Wizened kind of means old. So if you look at a tree or something like that, and it's all gnarly and the bark's kind of really old, it's as a result of the weather. So it's kind of saying that the earth has never troubled them with hay. I suppose here Heaney's implying that the ground is so ancient that the country itself isn't the problem. It's the people. It's the people that are power crazy. And here I've put the idea of the poem opening with a strong sense of security. And I'd like you to think about this in comparison to that last line, which says it's a huge nothing that we fear. So there's a complete juxtaposition between the start of the poem and the end, and it's almost showing that you can have all this misplaced confidence, but it won't last. And I suppose if you're reading this as an extended metaphor for the Irish Troubles, you might be thinking that it's not communities that are the problem here. It's the people that are desperate for power, like those 2 opposing parties. They're destroying their land. Okay, if you need to make notes, do so now. Okay, second section. Nor are there trees which might prove company when it blows full blast. You know what I mean? Leaves and branches can raise a tragic chorus in a gale, so that you can listen to the thing you fear, forgetting that it pummels your house too. But there are no trees, no natural shelter. You've got the word company repeated twice in the poem. Obviously, you've got that idea of togetherness, but you could also link it to the semantic field of war. So that's just words that link to war, isn't it? And again, it's that idea that it's almost a battle against nature, against something so powerful you can't control it. Heaney uses a caesura after the word blast. So when it blows full blast, I suppose here he's really emphasising the power that the storm has. A tragic chorus in a gale. You've got this beautiful bit of personification here about how trees can create a tragic chorus in a gale. And I suppose it's saying that even things that have been stood for a long time can be affected by the storm or by the conflict, if you like. You've got a lot of direct address, so you know what I mean, you can listen. And it almost makes this poem seem quite conversational. It's like the poet is having a chat with us. And again, Heaney's doing this deliberately to show that it was is the whole community that's affected by the storm or the troubles, whichever you want to read it as. And you see this shift in mood from being quite secure, quite confident, to this kind of ominous sense of uncertainty. Something's not quite right. You feel vulnerable and threatened. And that links nicely to here. Heaney does create a sense of helplessness here. That idea of forgetting that it pummels your house too. There are no trees, no natural shelter, as though the whole community is completely unable to fight back against this external force. So the storm, be that a literal storm or the storm of the troubles, the political storm. Take notes now if you need to. You might think that the sea is company exploding comfortably down on the cliffs, but no. When it begins, the flung spray hits the very windows, spits like a tame cat turned savage. We just sit tight while wind dives and strafes invisibly. Space is a salvo. We're bombarded by the empty air. Strange. It's a huge nothing that we fear. So you've got this oxymoron here straight away. So, words that kind of oppose each other, that are right next to each other. And I suppose the sea exploding comfortably is this inevitable force just continues to come. It continues to affect them. People have almost become accustomed to this way of life. They're so used to the conflict. And it's this idea of sea as company, but it's almost a warning. It's sinister. And you could start exploring the semantic fields across the poem. So the semantic field of emptiness, so I don't know, wind, invisibly, space, all the way through the poem. And the semantic field of the military we've already discussed. He uses another caesura here, but no. And he really wants us to think about how the community is almost lulled into a false sense of security and the effects of being complacent. You've got this simile about spitting like a tame cat, and literally my cat just jumped up here now. Strange. And I suppose it's, again, something that you feel quite comfortable with, something that you're used to, and it just turns on you, and it's completely unpredictable. So the community doesn't know what's going to happen next. It shows how close the enemy is in this situation, and appearance versus reality. Salvo and bombarded are military terms. You might want to Google them if you're not sure what they mean. So think about what that indicates to us about the storm. And then you've got the storm is invisible, and how does the poet use contrast here to show that idea of emptiness or invisibility versus kind of very solid ideas as well. I suppose at the end where it says it's a huge nothing that we fear, all of that violence, all of that violent imagery throughout is juxtaposed by this sense of emptiness. The enemy doesn't need a physical presence to wield power. So I suppose if you're referring to the Irish Troubles, then it's almost the gradual erosion of human rights as a result of these conflicting ideologies. Okay, take notes now if you need to. Okay, so here I've put the whole poem again because I'd like you to think about the structure and form. So I'd like you to think about where enjambment has been used. So remember, that's when a line carries on without end stopping, so like full stops or punctuation that's final, like an exclamation mark. And what it suggests about the storm, this continuation. And why do you think that Heaney decided not to split this poem into stanzas? And what could that tell us about the storm? That again, there's that idea that it's relentless, it's incessant. Where do you notice any tonal shifts? When does the tone change? So I suppose here you've got the idea of confidence, this violent imagery here, and then this fear, and a little bit more about the rhyme scheme. So the poem consists of 19 lines of blank verse. So that's, if you listen to the rhythm, we are prepared, we build our houses squat. It's kind of 5 beats per line, like a heartbeat. And this is typically used by Shakespeare. If you think like Romeo and Juliet, or she doth teach the torches to burn bright. And here, Heaney's kind of subverting this traditionally English poetic style. So I don't know if there's some sort of hidden message here about subverting English conventions. Maybe link that to how England invaded Ireland, things like that. And then any other comments you notice about structure. Obviously, this isn't completely comprehensive, so anything else you can see. But I'd like you to pause it again and take your notes here. Delightful, final slide. So for this part of the lesson, I would like you to be working in your exercise books or on a Word document, wherever you choose. And I would like you to make sure you pick at least one from each colour and respond to it in full sentences in your books. So you can see the code, so this links to meaning, pink. Some of them are fairly simple, so Google what these words mean if you're not sure, how do they link to the poem. And then some of them are quite hard, some of the structural ones. But I'd like you to have a go at least one from each colour, please. And do that in your books. This has been an almost whistle-stop tour, and I'm not some sort of YouTube pro, so it's probably worth you knowing that Mr. Broth is a teacher who is quite amazing at this sort of stuff, and he's also done an analysis of this poem. So if my rambling has been too hard to understand, do feel free to check him out, it will be useful. Any work that you upload, please do it on Teams if you are able to. Sorry about inflicting my poor Irish accent on you at the beginning. Hope you're well.